people that are familiar with the awake community, I would point out to them that William Cooper, who's
Mm-hmm.
quite famous, and Stan Deyo, both of them began exposing the ETs, and over a period of time came to realize that these were actually demonic fallen angels. And
Right.
uh, and then speaking of the trauma-based mind control, Kathy O'Brien's helper, Mark Phillips, he made a point of telling people that this whole ET thing is a deception. And that's what I would stress, is that there aren't any good extraterrestrials. These aliens are not good. If we understand the higher dimension, see, we live in, we talk about a three-dimensional world, but actually there's another dimension, space time. But you talk about, we're living in this four-dimensional world here, and when you go into the higher dimensions, things get so complicated. There aren't rules, like in our dimensions, we have the laws of nature and the law of gravity. Things are rational, and that's why you can have the subject of physics. You go to the higher dimensions and they're lawless. They're too complex. And so from what I have been able to determine, is that these things are coming from higher dimensions, and they're quite malevolent. They're not, they hate the human race. Some people call them, in the system, they call them NHEs, non-human entities. That might be as a good way to call it, NHEs. These non-human entities are not doing anything for our favor. And then in the deprogramming, when you get into the trauma-based mind control programming, the alien programming is far more powerful than the Illuminati's trauma-based mind control. So we're looking at something really dangerous there. You asked me
Oh,
about. Go ahead.
I didn't know that the aliens did programming, so that they've actually taken it upon themselves to run some kind of MK Ultra program.
Yeah, they're involved with the mind control. That's true. And you know that when people get taken by, they have missing time. I would describe these ETs as Satan's foot soldiers. Yeah, there's a lot of missing time and programming. I'll just pull out one little. I interviewed. This was back in the early '90s. I interviewed a man who had been abducted for years, and he had only glowing things to say about the entities that abducted him. They're I can't remember, 500,000 light years ahead of us, in their technology and their morality, blah blah blah. That was what he was spouting. But then, as I interviewed him, it turned out that every time that they abducted him, they buggered him without his will. He was not wanting to be buggered, but they buggered him. And this is when somebody can rape you repeatedly, and then you say that they're benevolent. That's mind control. Okay. So
What can I ask? What did the ET get out of having sex with a human creature? Surely that would be beneath them. Or did they do it as is it a probe? Are we talking probes here? Because that's what Whitley Strieber used to say about the probes that they used. Yeah. I mean,
well, I would say that what they're doing is traumatizing people to keep them dissociative, and then programming them to say that it was good. You
I
know,
see. Yeah.
they're constantly buggering. Children that get programmed are there's a whole series of pedophiles that will then um, rape them repeatedly as they grow up, and that keeps them in a dissociative state
Mm.
because they're having these horrible experiences. And see the mind. See if I could take you somewhere, Christine,
Mm.
and let's say there was hypothetically an island. It's not Madeira, by the way, but an island somewhere that was totally safe, where you could get away from anybody that was going to do anything to you, and your mind felt totally safe. Your mind, being an incredible thing, could pull itself together and heal itself.
Right.
So they don't want the mind to overcome the mind control and pull itself together. They want to keep you traumatized and in fear.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when I went out, excuse me, to interview the real IRA, I became, well, I had a sexual relationship with one of their commanders, very near the top, not at the top, just the second in command. And I remember being at his house and then switching into a totally different state of mind where I wanted to go straight away. I said, I need to go. I actually thought that I was going to run out of his house and run to an army checkpoint and say, please take me somewhere, just get me out of here. And so I do understand that. I mean, I had a very strong part of me that used to come in and out, and after I stopped working for Murdoch, it literally disappeared. I haven't had that part of me um, since I stopped working for Murdoch. I mean, it's 13 years ago. So, I mean, it's quite hard to just exist with one part of you, you know.
Hmm.
So I don't know, there's a
Yeah,
way. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Our fears are make us vulnerable, and that's why when Christ was here, he was constantly trying to get people to come out of their fears, and he was saying, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." He was trying to get people to move forward with courage and not fear, because they control us with fear. They intentionally
So,
do a lot
so
of.
So do you think I could get that part of me back again by praying or something?
There are ways that you could probably break the dissociative walls down and get it back, but um, you know, uh, I I'm kind of hesitant of kind of I don't know how you would describe it, spilling the beans, I guess.
Well,
Just
you might as
oh,
well. The time is late. You might
you
as well
know,
spill the beans. That's why we're
you know,
here.
if you had a strong altar that learned how to trance and go down deep, you could have one of your front altars trance and go down deep and look around in your system and see if it could communicate with this altar. And uh, there's different reasons why the altar may not uh, be available. You know, it's probably been put back to sleep, and it would take a special command to bring it out of sleep, because the people that were using it don't need to use that altar anymore. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's weird that I hacking, I was approached by the Guardian newspaper to do a sit down with them and talk about Murdoch's newspaper. And I said, yeah, I'll meet you the next day. And I was supposed to meet them. And then in my dream, I had dreams about a white rabbit, and the white rabbit was leading me around. Then it took me into a place where there's lots of dead white rabbits. And I was like, whoa, what? And it was very gory. There was lots of blood, lots of chopped up white rabbits. And then, so I asked the question, who is this? And then all the rabbits turned and looked at me. They said, we're Rupert Murdoch's army. And so the next day I rang Nick Davis from The Guardian. I said, I'm not going to do the sit down tell all. And he goes, might I ask why? And I said, I had a really scary bunny nightmare. Do you think that's some kind of control mechanism?
Oh, definitely. The white rabbit this is a common programming theme throughout trauma-based mind control. The white rabbit is the program. And yeah, what you had was standard trauma-based mind control programming going on there.
And how did it, because I look back and I wish it would have been in my interest to do that interview. Because now, you know, people say, oh, you don't know anything about it, but I very much was in the position that I did know more than anybody else. And I should have done that sit down. So, I mean, did it kick in, or, I mean, how did that know to sort of, is it someone outside watching events, or did it kick in with me to not tell? Was it a trip button inside, or what?
It's your internal programming.
Oh, I
You
see.
know, so like think of it this way. If you're to make a machine, if you have to sit there and fiddle and watch that machine and constantly monitor it, that's not as good as creating a machine that will run itself. You know, like out here in Kansas, we have an irrigation system. They're called center pivotal sprinkler systems. And you want that center pivotal sprinkler system to be autonomous as much as possible, that it will run itself, it'll turn itself on, it will run itself by itself. You don't want to be out there fiddling with that constantly. So this mind control is incredible, and the person is controlling themselves. It doesn't have to come from an external source. They've already built in the controls so that you will walk the path that they want you to. So this was programming coming from internally.
So they didn't want me to speak about Rupert Murdoch. Does that mean that Rupert Murdoch is an Illuminati member?
Well, he does happen to be that, but I couldn't say that that's particularly why they programmed you not to talk about him. I mean, they're sensitive, you know. They don't want something that they don't want to be exposed in any way. The U.S. military is the same way. You know, they don't want people to. I can give an example of that, but maybe I'll just not do that because we've got lots that we can talk about. And,
I know. I noticed that what happened instead. I had Hugh Grant. I don't know if you know the movie star Hugh Grant, and his co-workers accusing me of doing things that I hadn't done. It was another private investigator done this thing against Sienna Miller, Illuminati princess actress, and I was dragged through the media as being somebody that did this certain thing to her. Now, I didn't do it. I found out it was someone else, a West Indian guy called Lloyd from TDI Investigations, but I got blamed for it. Now, is that something to do with trying to shut you up so you get smeared? If they're not using you anymore, do you get smeared as someone bad? Oh, bad person, yada yada.
Oh yeah, that's just common. That's standard. They want to dirty everybody, and then you're easier to control. So you know, for instance, in my life,